Yes, guys, welcome back to the Spurs Lens. I hope you are all well, enjoying the lovely weather. I'm glad that it's actually cooled down outside, so we're not going through that torrid, crazy summer heat wave and less hot sweats at night and things like that. Now, what we're going to discuss today, we are going to discuss Lucas Bergvall with a few bids that's been made for him. We're going to discuss what Lloris has said about Dele Alli on the potential that he had. We're going to discuss Morgan Gibbs-White with some potential interest there. And we're going to quickly go over the scores for the under-21s who played Ebbsfleet this afternoon. Welcome to the Spurs Lens. My name is Anthony and I'm your host. So, Lucas Bergvall, the Mr. Sweden international, the one with so much potential. What is going on there? It seems like we're going into a bidding war for this young man. And if we are going to let him go, then clubs need to pay up the money. That is the agenda. If you want his services, you need to pay up the money. So Lucas Bergvall, quality little bit of talent. He's had interest from Barcelona. It was us and Barcelona who was fighting for his services before he then decided to join us. He's had his first season started off with him playing on the bench, and then he claimed the number one spot. He then was with an injury-packed season, and with two 17th place finishes, and us now invested in two high-profile midfielders in Sandro Tonali and Matías Fernandes. He is in a place where he just wants to know, is he going to be a first-team regular? And without Europe this year, it makes things difficult, because within the new European format, you get a minimum of 8 games. Obviously, would be in the FA Cup, the League Cup, and obviously the Premier League for fixtures. So normally when you're in, a lot of competitions, again, you will have a bigger squad. You will rotate in terms of obviously minutes, and that gives you half a chance. But Bergvall wants regular first team football, and I've said it to you guys on this before. When someone comes, especially young players, when they come into a club and they didn't come in and were slowly introduced into first team football, they basically come in and started playing first team football, to then get them to change their mindset and go, well, excuse me, a season ago or a couple of seasons ago, I was winning all the awards. I was the best player that season. I've been playing X amount of minutes, and now you want me to reduce my minutes? It doesn't really sync well with them. And obviously in a position, you want players to fight for their place, 100%. You want players to fight for their place, add competition to the squad, nice friendly competition, so everyone's working hard to earn those rightful minutes. Now, from my understanding, the club don't want to sell Bergvall, but if they are going to sell him, the club's coming in from need to pay the money. It's as simple as that. And we have to be ruthless in terms of our selling. Now, Bergvall, Tottenham's rejected a bid for Bergvall from Nottingham Forest, and that first initial bid was around the 38 million mark from my understanding, and then boom, Newcastle come in. They throw in another bid, a little curveball. They throw in 46 million. It's like, wow, okay. He's hot property. But he's currently at the World Cup, or coming back from the World Cup. He's currently on his break, and we need to find out whether he's going to stay or not. We need, obviously, strength and depth in the squad. At the moment, we have that with the defence. Obviously, yes, there's questions around Jed Spence's future, but we've got that depth in terms of the defence. Now we need that depth in terms of the midfield. Yes, Tonali's coming, and Matías Fernandes is coming, and Bergvall can learn a lot from these players, and especially in terms of like controlling the tempo of the game, etc. But I'd love him to stay. But on the other hand, if he really is eager to go and, you know, we're going to sell him, I don't want him sold at a cut price. He needs to, we need to make sure we're getting in the right money. And this would be, if we think about it, we had Vuskovic, bought him for peanuts, I think it was in and around 12 million. We then sell him for, 56 million, 52 million. He hasn't played a first team game. We bought Bergvall for 10 million. Practically peanuts. He's played one real decent season for us. Obviously the second season, injuries and things like that impacted. And if we're getting, close to the 60 million mark, throw in some clauses, or, percentage, sell on fees, that puts us in a nice financial position. And it means that we can continue to rebuild the squad and obviously manage our finances in terms of PSR and stuff like that. So, again, I don't want Bergvall to leave, but if he's going to leave, then we need to be making sure that we need the right money in. Newcastle have lost a big midfielder in Sandro Tonali. Nottingham Forest have lost a big midfielder in terms of Elliot Anderson. Both of them are going to put down a fight for this player. And, it's a shame that we haven't been able to see his real talent, what can be there for him. His real true ability. And I think, if he's playing at Nottingham Forest or he's playing at Newcastle, he will then develop. He will develop and get to, from my opinion, I think he will develop and become a fantastic midfielder. We hopefully make some money from it, and he'll probably end up pushing on and getting another big move. So it'll be interesting to see in terms of Bergvall, but we'll see what happens over the next, 5.5 weeks or so before the transfer window closes. Speaking of youngsters, we're going to talk about our youth academy. So there's been a lot of talk on social media in terms of us selling our youth. So obviously Bergvall, there's been talk, rough talks about Archie Gray. There's Vuskovic is obviously gone. Teenan Thompson is, I think at the moment, having a medical at Manchester United. Alfie Devine is gone. There's all these youngsters going. Now, correct me. Put your comments in the comment section. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for me personally, the last time I saw youngsters that come through our academy and played a sustained amount of games was around the time when we had Harry Kane, Ryan Mason, Ryan Fredericks, Townsend. Who else was there? That was probably the last time where I could say that we had youngsters from our academy that came in and played a sustained amount of games. Now, there's not many academies out there, especially in the Premier League, that will bring up players from their academy, their youth system, and play them consistently. It is difficult for that to happen. The percentage is low. I know this from working in the game. The percentage is low for players coming up from the under 18s, the 21s, to go play first team football, because there's levels to this. The levels are massive. That's why, especially in the Premier League, it's under 4% of players make it from development team, reserve team football, under 21 football into the first team. So, yes, I totally understand from a fan side of things. You want to feel a connection to the club. You want players who've come through the academy, who are they're born and raised in Chigwell, Barnet, somewhere in Essex, North London, where it may be. You want players to feel part of the club, who've grown up through the club, grown up through the academy, and make it into the first team. 100%. I want that all day long for us. But The reality of it doesn't happen here. In other countries, yes, the percentage is a little bit higher, where players will come through the development teams or the 21s, etc., or their B teams and make it to the first team. But in England, it is very low because there's so much money. There's so much money. If a midfielder is not pulling his weight in this country, you just turn money, you buy someone from Portugal, or you buy someone from Spain, or someone from from the English Premier League, and that hopefully changes things. We've got to think about also managers. You don't really get a lot of clubs who will push their agenda and go, we really want you to be making sure you're performing in, let's say, the Champions League, you're performing in the Premier League, performing in the League Cup and the FA Cup, but also we want you to make sure that you're bringing in, 4 youth academy players. There's a conflict of interest there. These managers are paid big money to obviously turn things around for their club, make sure they're competing, at the top end. It's very difficult, Obviously, it was great when we had Poch and Harry Redknapp, and they brought players through the academy into the first team, gave them a chance, played them in the League Cup, played them in the FA Cup, played them in the Premier League, and built up that momentum. But the higher you start pushing up the table, it becomes very difficult. So that's why you'll get teams like Chelsea. They'll finance a lot of money in terms of like developing players, in the youth academy. They know they're not going to make it in their first team, but they're going, well, we're going to make sure they make it in the Premier League at least, or even the Championship, or abroad in one of their top divisions, And having done some work for Chelsea, their motto was, we want to make sure that we're creating players for the Premier League. We're creating players for the top divisions. If that's their goal and their motto, then you need to, obviously, you're going to back that up with obviously making sure that it happens. And it means that they're constantly producing money for the first team, so they can obviously be towards the top of the table. So I totally understand in terms of like, we want players through coming through to the first team, but it's difficult when you're financing, now that we're throwing money at players and bringing players through the youngsters, through the youth system, it's difficult. It's difficult because jobs are on the line. So it makes it really difficult. So now we move on to Morgan Gibbs-White. So Morgan Gibbs-White now. A funny one. So obviously last season we went for Morgan Gibbs-White. We approached Nottingham Forest with an offer which should have triggered his release clause. The owner of Nottingham Forest was not happy, Marinakis, and he threatened legal action against Tottenham for pursuing the player and potential tapping up. So now, Morgan Gibbs-White, he ends up doing an interview with Marinakis on Nottingham Forest TV, their dedicated TV station. And it's weird because when you watch that video, it's almost like he's been held at gunpoint. And, he's thanking Mr. Marinakis and, showing his love for the club and being very respectful, very, very professional. And you see this in throughout the rest of the season, his performances. He's not started sulking or putting up a fuss or anything. He's just been professional. And at the same time, while Tottenham was trying to pursue him, his wife was in the process of nearly having a baby. So there was a lot of stress around that time. So totally understandable. He does want to put his wife under stress with having to move, with this big money move. So that's obviously gone, tits up for us. He then signs a year contract extension. So originally his, if I'm correct, his contract would have finished this year, so 2026. He then put in a contract extension, which then extended to 2027. So he's still got about 2 years on his contract, something along those lines. So now, why am I talking about Morgan Gibbs-White? The reason I'm talking about him is for 2 reasons. So it seems like he's moving. So there was a picture uploaded by his wife where I think the caption said something along the lines of, the stresses of moving or something along those lines. And it doesn't mean that he's coming to Tottenham, but obviously shows that there's a move going on there. Who knows what's happening? But also, Morgan Gibbs-White has changed agencies. Now, players change agencies for one reason. And the one reason is because they want to progress in their career. They want to get that next step, which the next step is that big money move. So I think he's turning 27 next year, if I'm correct. And, he apologized to Thomas Frank about the whole fiasco around the move. And obviously he wanted to come to Tottenham to obviously progress his career. Obviously increasing wages, playing Champions League football. All of this stuff would have been attractive to him. So he changed his agency to Roof. Very well known in the industry worldwide in terms of football agency. And if that's happening, it could be that there could be a move for Morgan Gibbs-White going somewhere. Maybe Tottenham might go back in for him. Maybe Tottenham might use Bergvall as part of the deal to try and attract Morgan Gibbs-White. I doubt it'll be a swap of any sorts of money, but maybe there could be a discussion of saying, okay, well, if we sell you Bergvall, we want you to give us the figure of what it would take to get Morgan Gibbs-White, and we go from there. So it's very interesting what could potentially happen there. Obviously, yesterday I spoke to you about Rodgers. Again, he's someone on the list that we are interested in. And the fact that we are interested in these players, it shows that we're trying to push this team. De Zerbi is not here to play games. I'm telling you that for free. He's not here to play games. The way we're approaching this window is, and Harry Scarf even said this yesterday on another pod we were on. Most teams, when they're sort of rebuilding, they do this over a few windows. At this moment in time, it feels like we could still sign another three players before the window's shut. That will take our numbers up to 9 players, plus obviously the sales that we make. So it's interesting what could happen. So watch this space. Morgan Gibbs-White could be a player that Tottenham end up signing. Man, that was a mouthful. Okay, so earlier today, our under-21s played against Ebbsfleet United, where they lost 2-1. Ebbsfleet took the lead. We then equalised, and Ebbsfleet then went on to score the winner. They did have quite a few chances in the game. Obviously, Tottenham under-21s and Ebbsfleet are at 2 different stages in terms of their pre-season. Ebbsfleet United, who obviously competes at Conference National South, if I'm correct, or been promoted to the Conference Premier. I think it's Conference Premier they've been promoted to. They've already played 4 pre-season games already, and today was number 5. Tottenham under-21s, this is their first one. Good experience for them, playing against professional players at the lower end of the table, but also players who are physical and experienced at a different level, and it would then definitely help to train and develop our players in terms of that. So I'm sure our youngsters have gotten a lot out of that game in terms of pre-season, in terms of obviously the physical fitness side of things, but also just building up their knowledge of the tactics that they'll hopefully be playing for the upcoming season, and obviously building up again their fitness and preparing themselves for any loans that might happen. So guys, if you have anything that you don't agree with or agree with what I've just discussed, please get it in the comment section. Yeah, get in the comment section. Let's talk about it. Like, comment, hype, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Come on, you Spurs.